Peace. Good morning. I hope your today is great and your tomorrow is greater. We're gonna hop right into the reading of the day. It's been a while since I got at this, but I've been building up a library, taking care of a few things on the side, but I'm back at it. Today we're gonna start with Rich Dad Poor Dad by the great Robert Kiyosaki, and I'm gonna just hop right in. Rich Dad Poor Dad, the number one personal finance book of all time, explores the myth that you need to earn a high income to be rich, especially in a world where technology, robots, and global economy are changing the rules. Teaches why acquiring and building assets can be more important to your future than a big paycheck and the tax advantages investors and business owners enjoy. Rich Dad Poor Dad challenges the belief that your house is an asset, as millions of people learned firsthand when the housing bubble burst and the subprime mortgage fiasco raised. Rich Dad Poor Dad reminds us why we can't count on the school system to teach our kids about money, why this critical life skill is more important today than ever before. Explains what to teach your kids about money so they can be prepared for the challenges and opportunities of today's world and enjoy the rich life they deserve. Rich Dad Poor Dad is a starting point for anyone looking to gain control of their financial future, says USA Today. Book study is a part of the Rich Dad philosophy. Read, discuss, study, and discuss again. This 20th anniversary edition includes 9 new study session sections to use as a guide as you read, reread, discuss, and study this book with your friends and family. The main reason people struggle financially is because they have spent years in school but learn nothing about money. The result is that people learn to work for money, but never learn to have money work for them. Robert Kiyosaki has challenged and changed the ways tens of millions of people in the world think about money. With perspectives that often contradict conventional wisdom, Robert has earned a reputation for straight talk, irreverence, and courage. He is regarded worldwide as a passionate advocate for financial education. All right, so we're not going to get into any chapters today, but I am definitely going to read like the acknowledgments and I guess like the intro, right? Dedication to parents everywhere, a child's first and most important teachers, and to all those who educate, influence, and lead by example. Acknowledgments. How does a person say thank you when there are so many people to thank? Obviously, this book is a thank you to my 2 fathers who were powerful role models and to my mom who taught me love and kindness. The person most responsible for this book becoming a reality is my wife, Kim, my partner in marriage, business, and in life. She makes my life complete. Okay. 20 years, 2020 hindsight. It was 20 years ago today. The Beatles released the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album on June 1st, 1967. It was an immediate commercial and critical success, spending 27 weeks at the top of the albums chart in the UK and 15 weeks at number 1 in the United States. Time magazine declared Sgt. Pepper's a historic departure in the progress of music. It won 4 Grammy Awards in 1968, as well as Album of the Year, the first rock album ever to receive that honor. Rich Dad Poor Dad was released 20 years ago on my 50th birthday on April 8th, 1997. Unlike the Beatles story, the book was not an immediate commercial success. It was not a critical success. In fact, the book's release and the firestorm of criticism that followed was quite the opposite. Rich Dad Poor Dad was originally self-published because every book publisher we approached turned down my book. A few rejection slips offered comments like, "You don't know what you're talking about." I learned that most publishers are more like my highly educated poor dad than my rich dad. Most publishers disagree with my rich dad's lessons on money, as did my poor dad. 20 years ago today. In 1997, Rich Dad Poor Dad was a warning, a book of lessons about the future. 20 years later, millions of people around the world are more aware of my rich dad's warning and his lessons about the future. With 2020 hindsight, many have said that his lessons were prophetic. Predictions come true. A few of those lessons are Rich Dad lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. 20 years ago, a few publishers turned my book down because they did not agree with the Rich Dad's number 1 lesson. Today, people are more aware of the growing divide between the rich and everyone else. Between 1993 and 2010, over 50% of the increase in the national income in the United States went to the wealthiest 1%. Since then, things have only gotten worse. Economists at the University of California found that 95% of the income gains between the years 2009 and 2012 also went to the wealthiest 1%. The lesson? The increase in income are going to entrepreneurs and investors, not to employees, not to the people who work for money. Rich Dad lesson. Savers are losers. 20 years ago, most publishers vehemently disagreed with this lesson from Rich Dad. For the poor and middle class, saving money is a religion, financial salvation from poverty and protection from the cruel world. For many people, calling savers losers is like taking God's name in vain. The lesson? A picture is worth 1,000 words. Take a look at the chart of 120 years of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and you will see why and how savers became losers. The chart shows there have been 3 massive stock market crashes in the first 10 years of this new century. The chart below illustrates these crashes. The first crash was the dot-com crash around the year 2000. The second and third crashes were the real estate crash of 2007, followed by the banking crash of 2008. The giant crash of 1929. When you compare the first 3 crashes of the 21st century to the giant crash of 1929, you gain a perspective of how truly giant the first 3 crashes of this century were, printing money. The chart below shows that after each crash, the United States government and the Federal Reserve Bank began printing money. Saving the rich. Between the years 2000 to 2016, in the name of saving the economy, the banks of the world kept cutting interest rates and printing money, while our leaders want us to believe that they were saving the world. In reality, the rich were saving themselves and threw the poor and middle class under the bus. Today, interest rates in many countries are below zero, which is why savers are losers. Today, the biggest losers are the poor and middle class, the people who work for and save money. Rich dad lesson. Your house is not an asset. 20 years ago in 1997, every publisher who sent me a rejection slip criticized Rich Dad's lesson that your house is not an asset. 10 years later in 2007, when subprime borrowers began to default on the subprime mortgages, the world's real estate bubble burst, and millions of homeowners found out the truth in that lesson the hard way. Their house was not an asset. The real problem? Most people do not know that the real estate crash was not really a real estate crash. Poor people did not cause the real estate crash. The rich caused the real estate crash. The rich created financially engineered products known as derivatives, products Warren Buffett has called weapons of mass destruction, weapons of financial mass destruction. When the financial weapons of mass destruction started to explode, the real estate market crashed, and poor subprime borrowers were blamed. In 2007, there were an estimated 700 trillion in financial derivatives. Today, it is estimated that there are 1.2 quadrillion in financial derivatives. In other words, the real problem has gotten bigger, not better. Rich dad lesson. Why the rich pay less in taxes. 20 years ago, a few publishers criticized Rich Dad Poor Dad for disclosing how and why the rich paid less in taxes. One stated that the lesson was illegal. 10 years later, in 2007, President Barack Obama was running for re-election against former Governor Mitt Romney. When it was disclosed that President Obama paid approximately 30% of his income in taxes and Governor Romney paid less than 13% in taxes, Mitt Romney began the downhill slide that would cost him the election. Taxes again were a focal point in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Rather than find out how many people like Mitt Romney and President Donald Trump pay less in taxes legally, the poor and middle class get angry. While President Trump promises to reduce taxes for the poor and middle class, the reality is the rich will always pay less in taxes. The reason the rich pay less in taxes go back to Rich Dad's lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. As long as a person works for money, they will pay taxes. Even when presidential candidate Hillary Clinton was promising to raise the taxes on the rich, she was promising to raise the taxes on those with high incomes, people like doctors, actors, and lawyers, not the real rich. 20 years ago, although Rich Dad Poor Dad was not an immediate success, like the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, Rich Dad Poor Dad did make the New York Times bestseller list by the year 2000 and stayed on that list nearly for 7 years. Also in the year 2000, Oprah Winfrey called, I was on Oprah for the entire hour, and as they say, the rest is history. Rich Dad Poor Dad has become the #1 personal finance book in history, with sales of the Rich Dad series of books estimated at nearly 40 million copies worldwide. Was there really a rich dad? Millions have asked, was there really a rich dad? To answer that question, you can listen to Rich Dad's son, Mike. When he was a guest on the Rich Dad radio show, you can listen to that program by going to richdadradio.com. Rich Dad Graduate School. Rich Dad Poor Dad was written as simply as possible so that almost everyone could understand my Rich Dad's lessons. For those who want to learn more, as part of the 20-year celebration I wrote, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, What is Financial Education Really? Let me read that again. For those who want to learn more, as part of the 20-year celebration I wrote, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, What is Financial Education Really? Why the Rich Are Getting Richer goes into greater, more specific detail on what Rich Dad really taught his son and me when it came to money and investing. Why the Rich Are Getting Richer is Rich Dad, Poor Dad for graduate students. It's graduate school for Rich Dad students. A warning and an invitation. While I did my best to keep Why the Rich Are Getting Richer as simple as possible, what the rich really do not, what the rich really do is not easy or easy to explain. What the rich really do requires real financial education not taught in our schools. I suggest reading Rich Dad Poor Dad first. Then, if you want to learn more, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, maybe for you. Thank you for 20 great years to all our readers, past, present, and future. All of us at the Rich Dad Company say thank you for 20 great years. It is our mission to elevate the financial well being of humanity, and that starts with one life and one person at a time. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and I will read the introduction later on today because I got some other things I got to take care of. Just wanted to get a few minutes in real quick and get it going. But I hope your day is great, and I hope your tomorrow is greater. Peace.